The Whale, that's right, folks. We are talking about the new Darren Aronofsky film with the return, I use loosely, of Brendan Fraser. And yeah, there's stuff to talk about in this. Look, first off, I do want to state when it comes to Darren Aronofsky, the man has never made a film that isn't divisive, and he's never made anything that's connected with me personally. I've liked some of his works. There's some that I just don't care about in the slightest. And there's things where I'm just like, yeah, this is an important filmmaking moment and he's doing some cool stuff. Doesn't always work. And when The Whale was announced, I was like, okay, yeah, I see how this is something that like an actor would want to work on. Fraser is coming back into the Hollywood scene, which I say loosely because he has kind of been doing a renaissance on television, and then he's coming back. This is like his first big movie where he's like a leading man. He's getting the awards accolades that is kind of like the career award thing where he's going to win all these awards because of what happened to him in the industry and because he's earned it, which is all fine. And then you're like, okay, why did Darren Aronofsky feel he needed to tell this story? He was like, it's time I tell this one. And I don't know enough about his personal life. I didn't really dig into like the backstory of like his need or like his life to really grasp what about this journey he needed to talk about. Is it the idea of just like fat phobia in the world and like exposing that or talking about how we treat that? I don't know. It's very bizarre. Was he a teacher in like another life? Does he have a strained relationship with his daughter? I don't think any of those are the case when it comes to Aronofsky. I think maybe he had like one idea based on somebody he knew and it's like, I could turn that into a movie. And then you get The Whale. So full disclosure before we go forward, I wasn't the biggest fan of this. And I know it's a divisive film, and I'm not going to criticize anybody for putting it in like their top 10 of the year or saying like Fraser is given the best performance of his career or like the best performance of the year. I'm not going to criticize for that. Because I think there is stuff in all of that that could be discussed and looked at with favor. Just for me, everything about this felt almost hollow. It didn't feel real. I was kind of trying to find like a way to describe this. It would be like watching a stage play from somebody who thinks they're being like dramatic or inventive or metaphorical, talking in all of like these illusions and ideas and being more grand than they actually are. That's the best way to look at this, because if this was on stage, it definitely feels like an off-Broadway, more amateurish style of story than something with actual legs. The basic premise is Fraser plays this 600-pound man who is an online school teacher, and he is in some certain stage of his life where he is looking to reconnect with the daughter he lost after running away with his lover that broke up his marriage. And that in itself, a very theatrical story that could lean into like, like a cat on a hot tin roof kind of vibes. And it does kind of have that energy. It's just kind of hollow, and it just doesn't like have any real depth to it, and not that it needs to, but when you're delving into like a character whose performance is solely based on the relationship with the people in his life, the relationship with the people no longer in his life, the reconnection of that stuff, his insecurities, you need to have a little more than the surface level stuff. And I don't think that ever really gets explored. The pacing of this, not the strongest. It does feel like we have certain moments we want to hit to get to the next scene. We are building up to like a final climactic moment, which is worthwhile. And look, while I'm not the biggest fan of this film, there are a lot of moments that I feel do hit. And when I went to see this in the audience, people were crying and they were feeling it. The last 10 minutes is very powerful. It's very strong. It definitely is the theme of this movie. If the rest of the movie felt like those 10 minutes, it would have a lot more going for it. There is a very powerful scene, like kind of in like nearer the end of the film, where you're just seeing real acting going on. And this could be a whole other topic. I don't want to spend too much time on it. I have stated my opinion on people wearing fat suits and doing that kind of prosthetic work for film. I don't support it all the way. Like, this is one of those performances where I know why you got Brendan Fraser to do it. Like, you picked him because his career almost represents the story of what Charlie is going through. This man who had everything he wanted, but then other events happened, and now he's where he is, kind of looking for the resurgence of the vibrancy in his career and his life. And look, it's a cheap parallel I'm making there, not 100% accurate, but I know why you'd go for Brendan. I do. That makes sense to me. Is there other actors of a closer weight to what Charlie's supposed to represent that could do the job? Yes. I think there is 100%, if you were to find a character actor, an up-and-comer who is a little heftier, who could play this role as authentically, I think you could find that, because there are very clearly moments where you feel it is a man in a fat suit. There are some where it looks great, it feels authentic, and it's working. Then there are some where it's clearly a guy wearing prosthetics, and it doesn't look as honest, and it looks, again, like a stage production. You want this to feel authentic, you could have found somebody of a heftier weight who maybe would have sunk more intimate to that role. And I know Fraser's not like the skinniest guy in the world, but I don't know. I feel like you could have got somebody else to do that. I don't know if this film is like fat phobic or delves into that kind of story, but it definitely doesn't feel authentic to have a man in prosthetics scarf down a bucket of fried chicken or just like scarf down a pizza. It's a weird balance that it's striking in that tone where it's like, okay, this is a tragic figure, but we're also going to highlight the parts of him that are fat and kind of not make it a joke, but it doesn't do it in like a way where it's either neutral or against it. It's just kind of a very awkward position where it's like, this is almost kind of fun what we're doing here. Like, we're like, this guy, he is happy, and that's where Fraser really shines. But what he's doing is just kind of not natural in a way. And it's a little too playful in some of those elements. And some of them, it's like, we're putting a hat on a hat. Like, look how fat and gross he is. We're going to show you that in excruciating detail. And maybe that's the point. But also, it's not authentic when it's coming from this type of position we're putting it in. So it's very weird that way. Fraser, I have to say, doesn't give the performance that I would give the Oscar to this year. It's a strong performance. There are certain moments with him that are so authentic because he has this natural energy about him that is just positive and always looking for the upbeat moments. So when we're seeing his character of Charlie smile, it feels real. When we're seeing him broken and crying, it feels real because that is not what we want to see Fraser doing. There are certain moments with him that really work. Like I said, the last 10 minutes are very strong. There is a scene towards the end where he is kind of like revealing himself to the world in a way, and that had a lot of emotional impact, I think, more than other stuff, especially in, I think, a post-pandemic climate where the world is viewing people a certain way. That scene alone had a lot of weight to it. But I don't know, his performance, it's good, it's strong. It just also feels hollow at moments and very comical at moments and doesn't hold the weight it needs to at moments. But nonetheless, when he is crying, you are crying with him. There is a weird subtext of like a cultish religion element to this story that doesn't help it. It doesn't take away, but it's also like you could have probably put that plot somewhere else into something completely different. The writing is very mediocre in my opinion. Again, one of those things where it feels very amateurish is the way our character is like an English teacher and he is describing like you have to feel these emotions, kind of like Tar does in that way, where it's like you have to push past all the bullshit and actually see what it's trying to tell you. He's like, you have to be honest with yourself about that. It's a very amateurish way of describing what film or what story makes you feel, and I don't hate that, but it also doesn't come across as anything that helps the story anyway. It is interesting enough. The camera work is very creative because we are in one location primarily. We are using like good 360s all around the character when we have to see him or people move around his house while he is stationary. We follow his shoulder shots as we track around it. That all looks really cool. And I gotta say, I think my standout performance was Sadie Sink. I do think that this is going to be the most successful actress of her generation. I think she has picked a lot of really strong projects, and doing Stranger Things to get your brand out there and then being able to soar to new heights with something like this really works, because she is a very deceptive character where you think she's feeling one thing, she can switch to the other feeling really fast and go to all these different areas, and eventually where it pays off really works. A very strong payoff for that character too. Overall, it's not a very strong film. There are stuff in here that work, stuff in here that's going to make you feel emotional. You're going to smile knowing that Fraser is giving his all for a performance that feels authentic. But when you have such minimalistic dialogue and like a minimalistic idea of like a metaphor and story and how you're supposed to feel, with just very gratuitous fat stuff, I don't even want to say it's like fat shaming. It's just very like, okay, you're putting a hat on a hat at this point, where we get what you're doing, and doing more of it isn't going to help us understand it in a different light. It's a very specific weird quirk that this film has, and it doesn't help it in the slightest. Overall, I don't know if I can tell you to rush out to see this one, but if you are somebody who likes all like those big awardsy films and you want to see like somebody giving a performance, I think there are 3 moments in the film that really work for me for Fraser's performance. Other than that, I don't think... I should say this. I do think we could have seen somebody else in the role. So, Darren Aronofsky's The Whale. I am going to give a 4 out of 10. And thank you guys for watching this review. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Hive, and I will catch you in the next one. Have fun, stay safe, good luck.